Hi, welcome to another Teaching Tuesday. I'm Kristen Evans, the Education Coordinator for the Mission Aransas Reserve. And today we're going to be talking about nature printing. Taking an object from nature, such as a shell or a feather or a plant or even some seaweed, and making a print of it. This is a really fun art project, a way to create some interesting art from nature, but it also connects to science. It's a way to document and record evidence of a living object or a once living object. Hundreds of years ago, when fishermen or other scientists or naturalists needed to document something they found, such as a plant or a leaf, they'd have to sketch it or draw it or make a print of it. There weren't any video cameras or photographic cameras back then, so they had to use art in order to help support their science. So that's what we'll be doing today, is combining the worlds of art and science in nature printing. A nature print allows us to see the detail of objects, such as its shape, size, and texture. Important qualities when you're looking at an object and thinking about why it might have those features or how it might help it in nature. It's also important when you think about going back to identify this object. What unusual shape, size, or textures makes it different from the other objects that are similar to it? This is important in science when we classify and document organisms. We want the details to help us figure out how they're different. In order for your nature printing activity to run smoothly, you need a few materials that will help you create the prints that you're eager to make. The first thing you need, of course, is an object. So finding an object in nature from your backyard or neighborhood is a great way to start. Be careful about the objects you choose. You want to make sure something is safe to pick up, and in many cases that you've washed it before you're going to use it. Other items that represent nature, but maybe you didn't find in the backyard, such as a plastic animal, is another great object to print. We don't always have access to interesting natural objects that we can take home to print, such as, say, a fish. But feathers, once you've cleaned and washed them, or shells that you might find, and most definitely leaves, are great objects. The other things you need to make your nature print are the materials that you'll print onto and the materials you'll print with. Paper and fabric are great materials to print onto. You can use plain printing paper, or in this case I use newspaper print, and then of course you can use fabric. Any fabric that you might find at home, such as a pillowcase, an old t-shirt, or even some scrap fabric such as this, as long as it's light in color. Finally, you need the materials such as paint to make your print. I used, and I'm going to use, water-based paint today. It's easy to put on and it's easy to wash off. You need some paint brushes that are easy to use and easy to clean. And then of course you need a cup or a container to put some paint into. Those are the basics of nature printing. The first object we're going to print today is a plastic fish, because this is a pretty classic nature printing object, or a real fish would be the classic object. But today I don't have any real fish, but I happen to have a plastic one that was at work. So let's get started. What you need is a little bit of paint, and you just need a little bit to coat your fish. If you use too much paint, it gets too thick and you can't see the textures and the patterns when you do the print. Too little, there's not enough ink or material there to make the print. So I'm just going to paint this on pretty lightly. This is water-based paint, and so it's easy to put on and it's easy to wash off. So I'm just going to coat my fish pretty well here. I think maybe just one brush fill might get through much of this fish. Might need a little bit more. And I want to make sure to cover it well enough so that when I make my print, there's no empty spots. All right, I think I've covered my fish pretty well. So the next thing I want to do is get my material. I'm going to start with a piece of fabric because it's what I had on hand. So what I want to do is take my fabric and lay it over the fish. Once I've laid it down, I don't want to move it because I'll smear my print. So I'm going to put it right in the middle of this fabric, And I'm going to keep one hand in the center and then just slowly rub and pat my object. That's the key thing. You want to pat gently and smoothly to get all the ink onto your paper or fabric. Pressing too hard and you might squish the paint around. Pressing too lightly and you may not get the print. The cool thing that helps is that when the ink is on the paper or the fabric, you tend to see it on this back side. So I can see where I haven't really rubbed or pressed into my fish yet. So I'm going back and doing that now. And once I feel confident that I've gotten most of my fish printed and its texture has come through, I'll be ready to take off my fabric or my paper. I think we might be ready. I'm going to start at one end and gently pull it off. And there's my print. You can see a few places that I had a little too much paint, but I think overall it turned out well. Here's a fun fact about nature printing. Not only has it been around for a long time in the art world as well as the scientific world, when you are printing a fish, such as this one that I made earlier, that art form is called gaitaku. But it was also a way for Japanese fishermen, when this art form was taking place, to document their catch. So it also was a form of science. They might want to document not only what their fish looked like, the species, but also the size and the length of that fish. It helps them document what they're catching throughout the season or their year. They could also write information on their fish print about where they caught it and exactly when they caught it. All great information that even today's fishermen and scientists use to understand how we catch fish in our local waters. We do this in Texas and across the world. This was just kind of a fun, fishy fact of nature printing. I hope you had as much fun doing nature prints as I did. We're going to be passing off the Teaching Tuesday pencil to our good friends at the Port Aransas Nature Preserve. But before we go, we want to encourage you to share your nature prints with us here on Facebook. We'd love to see what you chose to print. Thanks and see you next time.